Our next talk will be about periodic systems, safety, security, and complexity. It will be given by Tajana and Kirigin, and it's a joint work of several authors, all very well known and loved participants: Musab, AlTurki, Max Kanovich, Vivek, Nigam, Scedrov, and Carolyn, Talcott. Tajana, please, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this talk will be on periodic systems related to industrial applications and their safety, security, and the complexity of those properties. And this talk is based on our conference paper of earlier this year on the Conference of Information System Security and Privacy. And currently we are working on extending the work and submitting it to a journal paper. So in the current times, we talk to our devices, to the cars and so on, but in the machinery as well, all these automated technical systems have evolved as their components increased their connectivity. And in particular in the industry, this has also been the case. So there's this new term, Industry 4.0, which is a manufacturing paradigm of highly connected devices. And this ranges from simple sensors and controllers to cyber-physical systems and Internet of Things. And this has quite a few good properties, and some of these are process agility, and it could also increase product personalization and allow some interoperability and stuff like that. But to see how it works, we now show a simple example, and throughout the talk I will use this pick and place example. I believe this is something that Vivek already discussed a couple of years ago in Dubrovnik, since he has been involved with industry in his work. So he has connected us to this topic. And this simple example is just to show what is going on, but it's expressive enough to show the main features and the problematics of the topic. So you can imagine this system where some containers are being carried on this track, and there's an arm that has a vacuum pump which can be turned on and off to lift the lids, and then to turn it off to put it on top of the container. But this has to be done at proper time, and it's repeated all over again. So that's just this simple job. And since these parts of the components of such systems interact, these are simple devices, and the communication is open, not encrypted. So this just presents an opportunities for cyber attacks. Not this is not just some theoretical approach. This could actually lead to serious both material and human damage, and it has been the case in several examples that some factories had to shut down due to some cyber attacks. So before considering security and exposure to attacks, we first investigate the safety of the system. So we usually call this property functional correctness. So we first analyze whether the system is correctly designed. So if it itself cannot reach some configurations that are critical or some bad configurations of a system, for example, whether the system is designed in such a way that the cap could fall while being moved. And as long as this doesn't appear to be a very serious event in the figure I've just shown, if you imagine that this cap is some heavy object that is lifted, then you can clearly see that it could damage the factory itself or the employers. So we first consider the safety properties and then the security of the system, where such bad configurations could be reached through some intervention from the outside, from intruder driving the system into a bad configuration, even when the system is functionally correct. And we will make some steps in our work towards a formal framework for such specification and analysis of the properties I've mentioned. And this is not the first time that the people have investigated this, but what we have seen was systematic but informal analysis of these properties. For example, security agencies for industrial applications of these interconnected components have studied the problems, and they have some recommendations of defining, for example, the functionality of the system using some models which are composed of elements that are called function blocks, and the data through which are exchanged through between those function blocks and the events actually that are modeled in the system should also be modeled in the proposed functionality descriptions of those facilities. And we will formally define the systems and consider the complexity results both of safety and of security problems for safe systems, for functionally correct systems. In several cases, we will define our systems, but also identify some classes of special classes of the systems with additional properties, and consider the safety and security in different settings with respect to different threats to the system. So the middle column is the results in general case, and on the right are some results with intruders that are bounded. And it is well known that these, in this setting, safety and security problems are undecidable in general, and we have obtained some decidability results in our model. And in that, motivated by decidability, we have also performed some automated verification in the rewriting logic tool mod, which actually confirms that some of the verification is feasible in practice. And at the end of the talk, I will show some results of that verification and the experiments. So this is our formal model of the system. We call it Automata Systems, and these are actually just systems that contain finite automata. Each of these automata will represent one of those function blocks, and how they model events and data exchange as proposed by the industrial standards will be reflected in our system by the channels that connect those automata. And so here you can see on this figure the example from before which can be modeled using three automata: the track on which the containers are moving, the vacuum mechanism on the arm, and the controller, which is communicating with the remaining function blocks. So you see those links that represent how the communication is obtained. So there's not a single communicating channel as in traditional Dole-Liao protocol analysis. There are simple one-way channels from one function block to the other function block, and that's for the direct communication. So automata systems contain finite automata, and every single automaton is defined through a finite set of its instructions, which simply represent how the events or the signals that the automata receives and sends prompts it to that action. So how the states are changed and what are the exchange messages. We have used different colors in this figure, so you see that some messages refer to messages received or the events that have been noticed, and in red are the messages that the automata sends. And here is the type of rule or the instruction of the automata, and as you can see, we are using multi-set rewriting formalism, and the form of rules actually contains the two types of facts, the Q facts and the R facts. Q facts are used to represent the state of automata, and R facts are channels, one fact for each channel. And the messages, the terms inside those predicates are either the star, which is representing an empty channel, or some message, and these messages will be kind of atomic signals, representing atomic signals. And you can notice that this rule has the same number of atomic formula on each side, and this is in our models referred to balanced rules, and in our previous talks, plenty of times we have discussed this type of multi-set rewriting rules, the balanced rules, and in particular, that rules can be used to describe systems of fixed memory or fixed resources, stuff like that. So we, in this case, are denoting fixed setting. So this is very suitable to use and will be used to obtain the complexity decidability. And so we have a fixed setting of a fixed number of automata communicating through a network of fixed capacity. And for example, this is definition of the control automaton, one of the function blocks through its rules. And you can see that these rules actually model the arrows in the figure, and from the initial state, the automaton changes the states. Actually, it would be a good if we could come up with a way to show maybe some film or some activating way to show how these components interact. But at the moment we are using this 2D static analysis, so you can see that actually even from this visualization you can see that it operates in some regular circles, either the inner system circle or the outer system circle, which depends on whether the vacuum actually is activated or not. And with looking at the systems and actually seeing the properties and requirements of the industrial applications, we have formalized that assumptions in our models and identified and defined different types of automata systems. One of those is periodic automata systems, which is the property of our example and of the most industrial application, and that is that some task is repeated all over and over again. So in our case, the placing of a cap is simply being continued, so the behavior of the system can be modeled as the repetition of those system cycles. So looking back at this example, you see that we have the choice of two cycles. We call those hypercycles. So the system either does one or the other and continuously repeats that behavior. And on top of periodicity, we have also noticed that within one of those cycles, each of the instructions is not repeated an arbitrary number of times, but a bounded number of times, and we use this assumption to define locally bounded periodic automata systems. And in our case, the pick and place system applies each of the instructions in a cycle, in a system cycle, at most once. So some are used, some are not, but not more than once. So our example actually is this the most specific type of automata systems. So when we have defined the system itself, we look at the ways to define the threats to the system or the intruder models. And we have seen that the British-German security agency has asserted that the major threats on Industry 4.0 application is the injection and tampering of messages. So as I've already said, these messages are not encrypted, and our intruder models in that sense do not need to have all the capabilities of, for example, Dole-Viao intruder that uses pairing, encryption, decryption, and so on. But we could already use more simple intruders to show all the possible attacks. So what we model is are intruders that can inject, tamper, and block messages exchanged through between the function blocks. And in fact, our intruder model is an automaton itself, so finite automaton, which has access to all channels. So its rules are of these three forms. This is a shortened way of writing down the rules as we have seen them before, because this automaton is just one state automaton, so we are just keeping the notation in the notation and just writing down the channel to which it applies its rule. So the first type of rules are just in inserting messages. So when the channel from A to C is empty, intruder can insert a message. It can also remove the message, that's the rule of type 2, and modify messages, that's the rule of type 3. And we allow any type of signal in any channel. On top of that general intruder, we also consider bounded versions of intruders, and the way that we bound their behavior is to bound the number of times that an intruder can interfere with the system. And we have come up with an example that really shows that this is a serious type of intruder, that the bounded intruders really can effectively perform valid attacks. And we have come up with an example of a locally bounded automata system, so very specific, very well behaved, functionally correct example, in which just one insertion from intruder can lead it to a critical configuration, and that means to perform an attack. And in addition, not only that the system is critical, but the whole behavior of the system has changed. So that intruder in action just makes the automata system no longer periodic. And these are now our complexity results. So as you have already seen, at the beginning, we have obtained decidability results. For the safety, we have, in the general case, obtained p-space completeness. And that is also the case for security problems, both in general case and in the case when intruder can only use space complete. But we have identified this class, the locally bounded class of systems, which is COMP complete for the safety property. And to show them verification results I have promised, we will now describe the scenarios that we have investigated. We have specified different instances, so either one or two instances of that pick and place application, and consider different bounds on intrusions, and furthermore used the case where the situation where the system needs to receive two messages in order to move towards the track on the track. So intruder would actually need to apply two actions to perform an attack, and this table represents these results. So we have four scenarios: one or two pick and place units communicating, and in the lower part we have that case when the two messages need to be applied in order to reach attacks. And each of the scenario has four cases, depending on the bounds on intruder applications, so from 0 to 3. In the middle, there's the number of configurations the tool had to explore to check for all possible attacks. And these numbers in brackets are just comparison with the most simple case of a single pick and place unit. This is the time it took to get the result. And finally, in the last column, here are the results of whether there exists an attack or not, whether the system finds it. And you can notice that the first case in each of the scenario is the case when intruder does not interfere. So that is actually the functional correctness, the safety property. So in all of the four cases, you see that the attack was not found. So our system was confirmed to be well designed, let's say. And you can also notice that even with one intrusion, the attack is possible in the first two cases, but not in the last two, where at least two messages or two intrusions need to be performed. So this has confirmed our complexity results, and we've been able to check those properties. And to conclude, we have made maybe the first steps towards some formal framework for this specification, since these devices are becoming more and more complicated, and in order to define or to find or to analyze both safety and security properties, it's good to come with some formal models to see what are the complexity results, and so that also some formal verification can be done. But since they are becoming more and more complex, we are confident that further refinement of the model can be done and to improve our research. So we could also extend our models with time and maybe resource sensitivity or cryptographic protocols, and also use statistical model checking to verify some of the strategies, both from the point of the intruder and from the system, to find some defense strategies. And some of the ways of defenses could be to find a channel which is the channel on which intrusions lead to an attack, and to protect that communication on those channels with encryption. And that's usually called security wrappers. So that's some of the ideas that for future work. And this concludes my talk. Thank you.